The impunity with which Kanini Kega, Sabina Chege and Eden Kenan is acting against Uhuru Kenyatta begs the question just how Uhuru Kenyatta allowed William Ruto to ascend to power. Uhuru Kenyatta was the head of state and the head of government, but above all, he was the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces. When Uhuru Kenyatta openly and publicly declared his support to Raila Amolo Odinga, he knew what he was getting himself into, because he knew very well that if Raila lost, then all those who were allied to him, all those who were against Ruto's bid to become the president, were going to suffer. And that is why I'm asking, just what was Uhuru thinking? As we approach the August elections, it was very clear that there were two camps, and there were public officers who had declared their displeasure with Ruto's prayers to become the president. People like Fredo King Mateni had openly declared that William Ruto would not become the president. The Jubilee Vice Chair, David Murathe, had even declared that Uhuru Kenyatta would not hand over power to William Ruto. And with all these statements, they knew that the battle lines had been drawn. So ladies and gentlemen, today you see how Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua are frustrating Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru is the first former president who is really facing humiliation from his successor. Even Moi really frustrated very many people. But when he relinquished power, Kibaki never bothered to shame him or humiliate him in any way. Kibaki allowed him to retire in peace. And when Kibaki retired, Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, Kibaki and Uhuru were a little bit of friends. They were enjoying some kind of cordial relationship, but he was also allowed to rest to retire in peace. But Uhuru Kenyatta is now facing a lot of difficult moments, and his party, if he is not careful, will go to Rigathi Gachagua and William Samoei Ruto. But just how did Uhuru miss an opportunity and let that moment slip out of him? We all understand that part of the reason why Uhuru Kenyatta took a low profile and decided to sit back was because of the pressure from the international community. It is all in the public light, in the public domain, that the US ambassador to Kenya, Madam Meg Whitman, and the former UK High Commissioner to Kenya pitched camps at Bomas because they wanted to see to it that their project was announced the winner, and that was William Samoei Ruto. And many have argued that it's not very easy to deal with the international pressure, that when the US coughs, then all the African nations, of course all the other nations, will catch fever because they are the superpower. And so some have said that Uhuru's hands were really tied, and that there was nothing he could do once US and the international community had declared their support to William Ruto. William Ruto was of course very crafty and cunning. When he realized that Uhuru Kenyatta had declared openly his support to Raila Amolo Odinga, William Ruto rushed to Chatham House and he signed a deal with the USA, of course, noting very well that he would accept LGBTQ, he would accept the GMO, and of course all the other contracts. He will be dancing to the tune of the USA. And you can't tell me that Uhuru Kenyatta did not know about this. I believe that at some point Uhuru was cautioned by the USA and the UK that he should stay clear from his succession politics. And he had no choice, because he was also assisted in 2013 and 2017. But having noted that USA had got interest in ensuring that Ruto ascended to power, Uhuru Kenyatta had got just one choice to prevent Ruto from becoming the president. And that was to ensure that he used all the government machinery to guard against any election malpractice. The former Azimio national agent, in his book Why Baba is Not the Fifth, narrate just how William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza team were planning to rig the August elections. Yet the Azimio fraternity did not make any plans to guard against any election malpractice, to prevent Ruto from rigging. And the reason why I'm saying that Uhuru Kenyatta had got all the powers in his hands, he was, as I've mentioned earlier, that he was the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces. He controlled the police and he controlled the KDF. And with this, he could have prevented any rigging to ensure that Raila became the president, to ensure that the safety of people like Fred Matiang'i, people like Joe Musheru, people like David Murathi, people like Francis Atwoli were or was guaranteed. But it seems like Uhuru slept on the job. And then he also manifested some weakling characteristics. Because I remember very well at some point, William Ruto was narrating a story to some Kikuyu elders. And he was saying that after David Maraga had nullified their elections in 2017, Uhuru Kenyatta wanted to give up, to go back to Ishaweri. But Ruto said that it was he who encouraged Uhuru Kenyatta to keep on. And he said he always slapped Uhuru Kenyatta for even imagining that he wanted to relinquish it and just abandon it that way. And so after realizing that Uhuru Kenyatta is someone who was manifesting weakling characters, they have taken an advantage. One wonders how even in Uhuru's backyard there are complaints that there were no agents. Because one of the mistakes that the Azimio fraternity did was to sit back and think that they would just ascend to power. Because it was common knowledge that William Ruto and the IEBC had plans. This is the reason why Jose Kamago and the team were arrested at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And with that, for those who follow this channel, that was the red flag. We should have gone for an election before that matter was resolved. Because the Jose Kamago and the team were arrested with election materials. And there were conflicting stories. At first, Chebukati denied knowledge of them. And then later he said that these were people who were invited to help in the preparation of election. They were preparing the system. Then later, before we knew it, there was some forensic audit that was supposed to be undertaken by the DCI. But those efforts were thwarted when the Inspector General, Mutambai, came up with Chebukati and they told us they were ready to work together. What prevented the government then from assigning all the NIS officials to act as agents in all their polling stations if they really wanted power. For example, they would have used even the retired policemen who they still have their contacts. They would have ensured that in every station there were agents. They would have monitored the IEBC. They would have monitored the Supreme Court, because all this was still under the control of Uhuru Kenyatta. And ladies and gentlemen, on Monday, Uhuru is supposed to be holding a parallel National Delegates convention somewhere in Ngong after he had been denied entrance in Bomas. But this might be thwarted by the police, because the Kanini Kega wing on Friday convened what they call the only legal Jubilee National Delegates Conference Convention, where they suspended the vice chair that is allied to Uhuru Kenyatta, David Murade, and they suspended Secretary General, who is also allied to Uhuru Kenyatta, Jeremiah Kioni. And I won't be surprised when the location that Uhuru Kenyatta is going to conduct or to convene the National Delegates Conference will be surrounded by the police, because the Kanini Kega wing says that any other meeting, any other purported meeting apart from that which they held, will be illegal. And since the government is supporting Kanini Kega, they will or might try to thwart Uhuru's efforts to convene this meeting. And this kind of humiliation is happening because Uhuru Kenyatta back then had got the powers. He would have prevented any election rigging, because even though the US wanted William Samoei Ruto, they would only allow him to ascend to power once he was declared by the IEBC, because they had captured the IEBC and they had captured the Supreme Court. If Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta had prevented and averted any rigging from the polling stations, we wouldn't have been where we are today. So I want to declare, or I want to submit to you, that Uhuru is a co-author of his own misfortunes. Today Raila Amolo Odinga is calling for demonstrations, yet we had a chance of ensuring that Raila ascended to power just by the mere fact that they controlled the police. Fred Matiang'i was the interior minister. Eugene Wamalwa was the defense minister. Uhuru Kenyatta was the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces. The ministers were under his control. Why did they allow William Ruto? Or did they underestimate his wrath? Because they had declared openly that they didn't want William Ruto to ascend to power. They had called him a thief. What exactly were they thinking? So today, even as Kenyans suffer the high cost of living, the skyrocketing cost of basic commodities, increment of taxes every day, we share the blame with the former president Uhuru Kenyatta. I know you might disagree with me, but these are my thoughts, that if they had decided to use all the machinery, to use all the powers that they had, they would have prevented the elections and Raila would have been announced as the winner. So today we are coming back as a second thought, going on the street, yet William Ruto has the sword. And the people are even ready to go and kick him out from State House. But it is not very easy. We have called off the demonstrations and I don't know whether it shall come back. I just want to say that this is a lesson to anybody who would want to contest as a president, because an opportunity once wasted is not very easy. Today they are now invading his Northland farms. They are now invading the Jubilee farm. They don't have respect to Uhuru Kenyatta. And all these are the machinations of his sibling, Rigathi Gachagua. It is high time Uhuru Kenyatta must now manifest another tactics. He must show Kanini Kega that he is not weak, because this is the advantage that they are taking, because they know that during critical moments they accuse Uhuru Kenyatta as a man who does not act very fast. Can you imagine if it was Ruto whose party was being interfered with? What would have happened? William Ruto has created fear that he is a ruthless man. He has created the image of a man who is cunning and can deal with you if you try to interfere with him. This is contrast to what Uhuru Kenyatta has manifested. Uhuru Kenyatta has manifested and portrayed an image of a person who is weak, because this is what Ruto thinks of him. Lekanchori is reporting that towards the elections, Uhuru feared William Ruto. Whether that is true or not, I don't know. But what I know is that the advantage that the Kenya Kwanza is taking is they think that Uhuru Kenyatta is very weak. I think Uhuru must now come out as a ruthless man. When they realize that you're ruthless, people like Kanini Kega will not even dare play around the way they're doing. I have seen the body language of Sabina Chege. She's not herself. Someone is pushing her, that she's now the one purporting to take the place of Uhuru Kenyatta. Ladies and gentlemen, Uhuru Kenyatta must now be ruthless. Because in politics, sometimes to need to be a benevolent dictator, you need to be ruthless. If it was William Ruto's party or Raila's party that was being tossed around and someone wants to rock the boat from within, something could have happened. Because they know that Raila is ruthless about his party. William Ruto is ruthless. Look at what is happening to Gideon Moi. Because he have manifested characteristics of being a weakling, they have taken advantage, and I think Kanu is finished. And someone told you that Uhuru Kenyatta and Gideon Moi were friends. There are people who are born and brought up in State House, and so they are not really natural politicians. They were brought into this because their fathers had been kings before. And that's the reason why William Ruto is tossing them around. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to submit to you that those who voted for William Ruto, the USA and the international community, and the weakness of Uhuru Kenyatta are fully to be blamed for the predicaments that Jubilee is going through, for the predicaments that people like Fred Matiang'i are going through, for the predicaments that Kenyans are going through. Right now, if Raila was the president, maybe things would have been different. No wonder people like Francis Atwoli decided to switch camp and support William Ruto. I don't know what you think, but I can fully blame Uhuru Kenyatta for letting it go when he had that opportunity. And that is my take.